Hi, this is the IGCSE Maths Tutor recording a video of how to solve Paper 1F from January 2023. So this is specifically for the IGCSE. Let's go straight into question 1, which I've already started. Play with the greatest number of words is Hamlet, so we can see that from here. Two plays that were made in the same year, so Henry V and Julius Caesar, both in 1599. And then question 1, part C, Othello has 9,329 more words than Macbeth, so Macbeth has got 17,121. If we add them together, and remember, use your calculator, 26,450. And then we need to write the number for part D, 21,055 in words. So 21,055. And I spelt it wrong, 55. Okay. Question 2, Luca has 5 kilograms of chopped tomatoes and each tin holds 350 grams. So he's going to be putting these chopped tomatoes into the cans. So straight away, we've got the chopped tomatoes in kilograms and the cans hold in grams. So I would straight off think, right, 5 kilograms, that is 5,000 grams. Write that down. Well, how many cans can he fill up? Well, it's how many 350s are in 5,000. So we're going to divide 5,000 by 350. Again, make sure you use your calculator. And we get 14.287 cans. So that's 14 cans, which is 14 times that 350 again, giving you 4,900 grams that he can put into cans. And we were specifically asked to work out the weight of the chopped tomatoes remaining. So there'll be 100 grams he can't get in. So 100 for that. And it wants us to be specific about the unit we're using. Give the unit, so there'll be a mark for this. Okay. Question 3, we've got a pattern, and if we have a look at the pattern, it's sort of expanding by 1 each time on each end. So if I draw pattern 3, which has got 5 across the top and 2 going down, that's pattern 3. Each time we're putting an extra square on the side. So that would be pattern number 4. So if we complete the table, it's going up 3 each time. So 7 add 3 is 10. 10 add 3, there are 13 squares. There'll be 13 in pattern number 5. If we wanted to figure out pattern number 8, well, we've got a few choices. We could just carry on the table. So that would be 16, 19, and then 22. Angus says there are 42 squares in pattern number 15. Angus is incorrect. Explain why. There's a few reasons why Angus is wrong. One thing we could have done, which we didn't do, was come up with the rule of the sequence, which is 3n minus 2. And that can never equal 42, because if we solve this little equation, when we come to figure out n and we divide 44 by 3, we're not going to get a whole number. We get 14.6 recurring. N specifically needs to be a whole number, so 42 is not in this sequence. Question 4, these should be what we're kind of happy to see, nice easy marks. 0.8 as a percentage, well, that's 80%. Remember, you could type in 80% on your calculator and get it to a decimal to check if it is 0.8. For part B, the 3 is in the thousandths column, so you could write 3 thousandths, or you could just write 0.003. If we're ordering decimals, what we want to do here is to make them all have the same number of decimal places. I mean, you don't have to do this, but this is one way of doing it. And then our brain will start to see 200, 240, 204, 40, and 42, and it should make it easier now to order them. 0.04 was the smallest, then 0.042, 0.2, 0.204, and then 0.240. And I gave them as they originally were. It doesn't really matter, but you should always give these numbers as they were given to you. And then write this number to 2 decimal places. So remember, what that means is we're just going to cut it off 2 numbers after the decimal point. So we're cutting it off there. And this 6 will decide if it becomes 25.78 or 25.79. The rules are, because it's 5 or more, the 6 is 5 or more, we go up to 25.79. And the square root of 1,296, this is what it looks like written. You've got a calculator, so we're just going to type in the square root of 1,296, and we should get 36. So some nice easy marks there. Question 5, Adam has 8 packets of noodles, and he takes it around in a packet of noodles. What's the probability that gets hot and spicy? So there are 8 choices, and of those 8, there are 4 hot and spicy. So 4 out of 8 of them are hot and spicy, which is a half. So we're going to put a cross at 0.5, because 0.5 is the same as a half. And then circle the word that best describes the likelihood that Adam takes a packet of vegetarian. Well, there is 1 pack of vegetarian, so it's not very likely. In fact, I would say it's unlikely that he gets a vegetarian. Let's go on to the next part. And here we're just going to complete a tally chart. Lots of ways of doing this. I would just potentially start with arborio and go 1, 2, 3, 3 of them. So put 3 tallies and put the frequency there. Then I'm going to go basmati. There are 3, 4, 5, 6. And just carry on like this. Jasmine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when you put 4, put a cross through it to show it's 5, and then put your 7 there. Wild, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I've realized now I've missed an arborio. So I can just put a 4 there. I can update my tally. This is the point of tallying. Whereas because I'd written that number, I now need to get rid of it and put a 4. There are 20 types, so we could check these numbers add up to 20, which they do. And I've ticked every one of those now. In fact, I need to go back and tick the arborio. Don't cross through, because then you can't read them. And that should be 2 fairly easy marks. Okay. And we've got 600 tickets Sandeep selling for an event, and he receives a total of 7,200 for selling the tickets, a quarter of children tickets. So what we could do, if you're unsure on questions like this, just think, right, well, I can find a quarter of 600. Maybe you can just type this in your calculator as a quarter times 600. That's 150 child tickets, and writing that there, really clear for whoever's marking your papers. The rest are adults, so 450 adult tickets, because that's what's left over from 600. And then the cost of an adult ticket is $13.60. So we can times 450 by $13.60 to figure out how much was raised from adult ticket sales. $6,120. So the rest of the money, the rest of that 7,200 must have come from selling children's tickets. So if we take away the 6,120, we'll know how much was raised from children's tickets. $1,080. And then we know that 150 children's tickets were sold. So if we divide 1,080 by 150, we will know what the cost of each child's ticket is. And that is $7.20 for a child ticket. Okay. And that seems right. It's less than the adult ticket. And we could always work through this again to check if we've done this correct. Question 7, again, we should be quite happy to see these kind of questions. We times the 5 and the 9 to give us 45. P times K, we just write as PK. Part B is collecting like terms, so there's a 3E and an 8E. Overall, they give us 11E when we add them together. And then we're going to add together the F's, and there's a positive 2F and a minus 7F. So overall, they give us minus 5F. And then part C is a simple linear equation. 2D plus 7 equals 16. We're trying to make D the subject, so we've got to get rid of the plus 7 by taking away 7. We get 9. And then to find what D is, we divide 9 by 2. So D is 4.5. Question 8, depending on how this has been printed for you, you might get a bit of variation in the distance between Paris and Bordeaux. The mark scheme allows 6 to 6.4 centimetres. I'm just going to work off 6. Again, it's sort of up to you, depending on how it's been printed as to what size you get. So if that is 6 centimetres, the distance from Paris to Bordeaux is 6 times 80, which is 480 kilometres. Now that would be called as the bird flies. If you're driving, you wouldn't drive in a specifically straight line. In fact, the drive is 590 kilometres. So it's the difference between these two. So we're going to do 590, take away that 480. And based on my numbers, I got 110 kilometres. That's how much further he travelled. Depending on what you did, you'll get a slightly different answer. Question 9, Avner is spinning 2 spinners, and whatever he gets on spinner A and spinner B, he multiplies those numbers together. So if we zoom in on this, we can see here 1 times 4 is 4. So we've just got to complete this table for 2 marks. 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9. 8, 12. Use your calculator if you're not sure, but you should be okay with those. And then Avner spins spinner A once and spinner B once. Find the probability that his score is an odd number. So let's just have a look. How many odd numbers did we get here? So I'm just going to highlight the odd numbers. So actually, we only got 4 odd numbers out of our 12 answers. So the probability of getting an odd number is 4 out of 12. You don't need to simplify it, but that does simplify to a third. Question 10 is about some orange juice. There's quite a lot of information in this table, but actually it's quite simple when you understand what's going on in this question. So 30% of the volume, 30% of 250 millilitres is orange juice. So we can just figure out what 30% of 250 is. It's 75 millilitres. And on carton Q, we've got 160 millilitres of the 250 is water. So if we take away 160 from 250, we know there is 90 millilitres of orange juice. So the difference between them is 90, take away that 75, so it's going to be 15. Question 11, it wants us to draw the line y equals 1 minus 2x. So there's a lot of ways to do this. One thing you can do is draw a table, and that's why they've left that little gap where I've written that. The easiest thing to do, though, is sort of move beyond the table and know that this is the y-intercept, so that's one of the coordinates, and the minus 2 is the gradient. So what that means is for every 1 we go along on the x-axis, we're going to go down 2 on the y-axis, and that's going to determine the steepness. So if we come along 1 to here and go down 2, that's going to be the next coordinate. So we can just put these in and then just draw a straight line through them. I haven't got a ruler to hand, so I'm just going to draw it by hand, but use a ruler. And always make sure you sort of go off the graph because it wants it between minus 2 and 3, which we've achieved, and that's how you do that. Lots of different ways, but that's the simplest way. Question 12, when we're asked to show something, you can kind of ignore this bit. That should be what we end up with as our answer. Obviously, you could just type this in your calculator, but you're not going to get any marks for doing that. You've got a calculator, but they want you to show them that you could do it without a calculator. To add or subtract fractions, they need to have the same denominator. The lowest common multiple of 8 and 12, well, they both have 24 in their times tables. So I'm going to change them both to be out of 24. And actually, looking at the question, it had told us they would be out of 24 anyway. So to get 8 to 24, we times it by 3. So we would also times the 7 by 3. So it would be 21 out of 24. We would double 12. So we would double the 5 to make it 10. 21 take away 10 is 11. So we've achieved what they wanted us to. Part B, the highest common factor of 130 and 208. My favorite way of doing this now is to write it as a fraction. I put that into my calculator and simplify it. And what that tells me is it's 5/8. Now the highest common factor would be the number that you divide 130 by to get 5, or the number you divide 208 by to get 8. Now, if we divide 130 by 5, we will find that number. 130 divided by 5 is 26. It would also have been the number there. Now, what I really like about this method, even though it's not asked us to do it, if we were after the lowest common multiple, we could find that now from either multiplying 5 by 208 or 8 by 130. Either of those would give us the lowest common multiple. Again, it's not asked us to do this, but I do like this method. And 8 times 130 is 1040. So that's why I like using that method. Simple substitution here. So we've got to work out the value of P. Well, P is equal to T, which we're told is 18. Take away minus 3 times 5. And obviously we've got our calculator. If we didn't have a calculator, we'd have to be aware that it's going to be take away minus 15, which is adding on 15. 18 add 15 is 33. Part B, we're looking to make X the subject. At the moment, D is the subject because it's D equals. We need it to be X equals. So one option I like to do this is to swap them over, because I know we want X as the subject. To get rid of that plus 10, you would take away 10. And then to get X on its own, you would divide by 3. So that is X as the subject. It's kind of like solving a linear equation, except we didn't take away the 10, we just wrote that we take away 10, and also we just wrote that we divide by 3. If we want to rotate triangle A 90 degrees anti-clockwise around the center, now you should have tracing paper whenever you do an exam. Without tracing paper, you can sort of map like this. If we're going 90 degrees anti-clockwise, that would turn around like that. So this point here would end up there. This point ends up going there. And this point going there. If you don't have tracing paper, you can use like plastic sleeves. You've probably got some with documents in. You can draw on them in biro. That works quite well. So that's that rotated 90 degrees anti-clockwise. And then part B, we've got to describe this single transformation. So it's an enlargement. That should be clear. There are 4 types of transformation: enlargement, rotation we just did, reflection, and translation. If you're describing enlargement, you need to give the scale factor. Now you need to be careful. We're going from B to C, so we are going from the smaller to the bigger. Each side has got 3 times longer. This side was 1. Let's change that to a nicer color. It's now 3. This side was 2. It's now 6. All the sides have got 3 times longer. Now the final thing we need to give here is the center of enlargement. And we can always find that it's often just the origin. If we draw in, these are called the rays. So we connect up all the points. They are going to all meet at the origin. So you can say center origin, or we could say that the center is 0, 0, the center of enlargement. Question 15. So an area question, I can see straight away we've got a compound shape, which is a rectangle and a triangle combined. This is the stage, and the manager's going to paint the floor. So straight away we should be thinking, well, we're going to have to work out the area of the floor, and we're then going to have to deal with how much the paint covers and then the cost. So I would always label them A and B. So triangle A, and it can help just to draw it separately, is a 2.5 meter high by 4.8 meter wide. It's got the same bottom edge as the length of the rectangle. So to get that area, we do half times 2.5 times 4.8. The common mistake is that people forget to halve this shape, and they just do 2.5 times 4.8. And let me just type this out on my calculator. Oh, 6 meters squared. So that feels like the right answer. And then if we do the same with the rectangle, we should be pretty happy that the area is length times width. So 3 times 4.8. Which is, and even if you can do these in your head, if you're in an exam situation, just always use your calculator. You don't want to make a mistake here. So the overall area is these added together. So we're going to add the 14.4 and the 6 together, and that gives us a total area of 20.4 meters squared. And then we need to consider the paint. One tin covers 1.8 meters squared. So we're going to divide that 20.4 by 1.8 to figure out how many tins of paint we need. And I've got 11.3 recurring. Now, the rules of rounding suggest you round down to 11, but in this case, we're going to need 12 cans. We can't round down, we won't have enough. So we need 12 cans, and they are $16.40 each. So 12 times 16.4. Now we're expecting to get close to $190 here. It's a bit of a clue that we've done it right. And we get 196.8 is how much he would need to spend on paint. So no, not enough money. Again, we should feel pretty confident with this because we've got an answer close to 190. Question 16 here, we've got a table where we're being asked to estimate the mean length of time students spent dancing. Now, first off, this is what's called a group table. So 11 students took 0 to 12 minutes where they were dancing for. So we don't have a specific time for each student. This is a learnable question. If you do enough of these, you'll be happy to see it. You'll be like, if they took 0 to 12 minutes, we're going to say that each student in this group danced for 6 minutes because that's in the middle of 0 and 12. For the next group, we're going to find the middle of 12 and 24, which is 18. And we just keep going down, finding the middle, 30. If you're in the next group, you danced for 42 minutes. And the group after that, the midpoint of 60 and 48. And actually, let's talk about this because I haven't spoken about it. How do you find the midpoint of two numbers? You can add them together to get 108. And if you halve them, that will tell you the midpoint. So the midpoint is 54. Okay, so once we found the midpoints here, we're going to say, right, those 11 students in the first group, we're going to assume they all took 6 minutes. So we're going to do 11 times 66 to get 66 minutes for their total time. I'm going to do that for every group. If you're good at maths, you can do it in your head. Please don't. Please just use the calculator. And we should get for these sums, these numbers. And these will be to get the total time taken by all 80 students. We're now going to add all these together to get 2,160 minutes. And the final step, we've always got to divide by the total with the mean. How many students were there? Don't divide by 5, which I see all the time because there's 5 rows in the table. divide by 80, and you will get 27 minutes as your answer. Really practicable. That's called estimating the mean from a table. If you're unsure, there's lots of worksheets available where you can practice that. On to question 17 now, where we're going to solve this linear equation. I've just written it out in my own handwriting, and then the first step should always be to expand a bracket in a situation like this. 3 times 2 is 6, and then 3 times 4 is 12, so we end up with minus 12x there. And on the right-hand side, 5 take away minus 8x. Now, if we have x's on both sides, which we do here, we should always be thinking, where are there more x's? Now, there's actually more on the right. Because they're both negative, minus 12 is more negative than minus 8, so it's actually smaller. So we're going to eliminate the minus 12x by adding 12x to that side. That will mean on the left we just have 6. Because they're equal to each other, we have to add 12x to the right. So we end up with 4x plus 5. I've just swapped them around there. And then I'm going to get 4x as the subject. 6 take away 5 is 1. And the final step, I'm going to divide that 1 by 4. And you can just leave it as a quarter or 0.25. Either's fine. So you would need a compass to this. I don't have one because I'm doing it on the screen. I'm just going to talk you through what you should do. So we're after the perpendicular bisector. So perpendicular specifically means at a right angle, and bisect means to cut in two. So basically what we're trying to do, I'm just going to quickly draw it on, is come up with a line that cuts the line AB in half and at a right angle. You can see I haven't drawn that correctly, but that's basically what we're going to try and do. Now it says show your construction line, so we have to show how we did this. What I would do is put my compass point on there and open it up over halfway and draw an arc on this side and on the other side. I would then take my compass to the other side, put the point on there and do the same. And what we get are these two crosses, which when we join them up should give us the perpendicular bisector. Now remember, I told you I'm doing this roughly, and you can see it's not halfway. It's just a general idea of how you do it. I would suggest if you're unsure how to do this, go away and Google perpendicular bisector. You can find lots of videos where someone's doing it on paper and hand drawing it to see exactly how you do this. Question 19, we're being asked to find the missing angle in this pentagon. So a couple of things we need to know. Specifically, we need to know what angles in a pentagon add up to. Well, they always add up to 540 degrees. If you don't know that, you're going to struggle on this question. In fact, it's going to be impossible. So you need to go away and learn what the angles in polygons add up to a 10-sided polygon, which is called a decagon. We also need to know that this means 90 degrees. It's a right angle. So all we need to do now is add up the 4 angles that we do know. Use your calculator. And those 4 angles add up to 411. So our missing angle must be whatever 540 take away 411 is. And that is 129 degrees. Okay. It says it's not drawn accurately. What that means is it doesn't want you to use your protractor. But things you should bear in mind is 129 is obtuse, and X does look like it's obtuse. If we'd got a number less than 90, we should be thinking we've gone wrong. But yeah, quite a simple question there, but really did rely on you knowing that they added up to 540. Without that, you'd be struggling to get any marks here. Question 20, I've just taken some of this information. Green to orange is 2 to 3, so I've put that there. And then the ratio of orange to yellow is 1 to 5. And then we're just going to combine this into one overall ratio. So we can put the 2 to 3 in here. And we know that there's 5 times as many yellows as orange. So we can also just put 15 there. So that's the overall ratio. There are 20 parts to this ratio, 2 plus 3 plus 5. 2 plus 3 plus 15 is 20. So now if we divide our 280 sweets by 20, we get 14 for each part. How many greens are there? Well, 2 times 14, 28 greens. So that's combining ratios. Question 21, we've got a car that Shane bought. He paid $32,000 altogether. Teresa also bought a car. To pay for this car, Teresa paid a deposit of $18,000 together with 14 monthly payments. She paid more than Shane. So work out how much more Teresa paid as a percentage of what Shane paid. So there's a lot going on here. We can worry about a percentage in a minute. I would just figure out how much Teresa paid to start with. So it was an £18,000 deposit, which means that's what she paid to start with. And then she made 14 monthly payments of $1,160. So if we do this sum, we're going to figure out exactly what she paid. And she paid $34,240 for her car. Teresa paid more than Shane. It's the difference between what she paid and what he paid. So she paid $2,240 more. As a percentage of what Shane paid, so it's the difference divided by the original, or in this case what Shane paid, $32,000. And if we do that division, we would get it as a decimal, which would be 0.07. We would times it by 100 to get our 7%. Kyle bought a van. After 1 year, the value of the van was this. During this year, the value of the van decreased by 15%. Work out the value of the van when Kyle bought it. So this is a reverse percentage question. What I mean by that is because his van's gone down by 15%, it's now 85% of what it was originally. Because 100 take away 15 is 85%. So we're starting off with 85% equal 39,865. Now the original price is 100%. So the key here is we've got to go from 85% to 100%. It's not very easy to go straight there. What we're actually going to do is go to 1%. And to go from 85% to 1%, you divide by 85. That's called the unitary method. So let's get rid of that. We're going to do 85% divided by 85. Well, we're not going to do that. We know that's 1%. That's the point. But we do need to do 39,865 divided by 85. And we get 1% as 469. Now to get to 100%, we times by 100, and we're going to times 469 by 100, which is 46,900. And when we do this, we should always get back to a nicer number. That feels nicer than 39,865. What you can do to check is you can check is if you take 15% off 46,900, do you get 39,865? So we've got a question here about library books. So straight away, we've got a probability table. So I would be thinking straight away that these four numbers need to add up to 1. They always add up to 1 or 100%. We know two of them. 0.24 add 0.40, they add up to 0.64. So we know the remaining probabilities must be 0.36. because these together will add up to 1. Without even reading the question, I straight away, if you do enough of these, you'll sort of think, that's what should happen. And it wants us to figure out how many of the members answered mystery books. So we need to figure out what probability is mystery. So we've got to do a little bit of algebra here. These two together add up to 4x. And that 4x is equal to 0.36. So 1x is equal to 0.09. And in the case of the mystery book, 3x must be 0.27. We times that 0.09 by 3. So those are the missing probabilities. So 27% of the members liked mystery books. If we come here, 48 members answered comedy books. So 24% is equal to 48 members. So we can maybe spot straight off that 1% is 2 members. So all the members, 100% of the members, there must be 200. So for mystery, what's 27% of 200? That is 54 members. Question 23, there's a lot going on here. There's 5 marks. It's a tricky question. What does it overall want us to do? It wants us to work out the perimeter of the semicircle. So it wants this length. So all the way around here. And we don't have any of those lengths. So we've got to figure out 2 things actually here. We need to figure out what the diameter is, because that's part of the perimeter. And we're also going to need to know this arc length. It's part of the circumference. Because it's a semicircle, it's half of the circumference. So if we can work out the circumference of the whole circle, we can get that yellow length just by halving it. And we need to figure out the diameter of the semicircle. And actually, we're going to need that to get the circumference anyway. So our first goal really needs to be, can we figure out that green length? And we can. We've got a right angle triangle within that semicircle. And I like to draw them separately so I can sort of focus on it. We know a side and we know this angle. So the hope is always that it's Pythagoras because it's easier. But Pythagoras, we need to know 2 sides. So it's going to be trigonometry to find the missing length AB. So this is where we're going to start. So if you're not confident with trigonometry, you need to go away and learn how to do this. First step in trigonometry is how we label the sides. Because we know angle A, the 50 degrees, we're going to work off that. The green side we want is the hypotenuse, and we know the adjacent. We know the side next to the angle. We don't know the opposite. I'm not even going to label it. I use the triangle for trigonometry, and I know that the rule that involves A and H is cos. And we need to find H. That's what we're trying to find. So the hypotenuse can be found by dividing the adjacent, the 18, by cos 50. And straight up, we're going to get the hypotenuse from doing this. 18 divided by cos 50. Type that in your calculator. And we get 28.000. So I'm going to feel okay using 28. Now what I'm going to imagine is that we've got a whole circle. Draw it down here, and we know that the diameter, we just found it, is 28. To work out the circumference, we do the diameter, which is 28 times pi. So the circumference will be 28 pi. And we only want half the circumference. We want that arc length. So that's going to be 14 pi. So now to get the perimeter of the semicircle, we can add the 14 pi and the 28 together, and that will give us the perimeter of the shape. So 14 pi plus 28. There's a lot going on in this question. I would expect a lot of people to struggle with this because you need to be confident on trigonometry, on circumference of a circle, and then just bringing all this together as well. To 2 significant figures, it's just going to be 72 centimeters. Okay, and actually a lot easier here, onto standard form. We should be comfortable with this. If it's a negative power, this is 6.25 times 10 to the negative 4, which means it's a small number. Because it's got a 4 there, there will be 4 zeros if we count the 1 at the start as well. So we've got 4 zeros, and it's that. Doing this in standard form, so we've got our calculator, so we can just type this in. Just going to type this in to do it. And the correct answer is 2.5 times 10 to the 7. And even those 2 marks, you will get the 2 marks just for typing it incorrectly. So you should learn how to do that on your calculator. Without a calculator, 2.4 times 10 to the 12 will be 24 with 11 zeros because the 4 takes up one of the spots. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. As a normal number, 9.6 times 10 to the 4 is 9, 6, and then only 3 zeros because the 6 took up one of the spots. So if you want to show that as well and then type that into the calculator, it's up to you. And that gives us an answer of 25 million, which is 2.5 times 10 to the 7. Factorizing this, so double brackets, we should recognize this is a double bracket. We should be looking at this minus 48 tells us a lot of things. One, it tells us that the 2 numbers at the end, one's positive, one's negative, because they times to make minus 48. They could be any of these pairs. And we're looking for the pair which have a difference of 2. So that's telling us that. And that's 6 and 8. And specifically to get minus 2y, we need minus 8 here and a plus 2 here. So that's how you factorize that one. Really important to do on the higher paper. Not as common on the foundation paper, really important skill for the higher paper. So if you are looking to move on to doing higher papers, definitely make sure you're good with quadratics. The inequality here, well, there's an x there. The arrow is pointing this way. So x is less than 3. And because this circle is solid, it means it includes 3. So x is less than or equal to 3. If it wasn't colored in, if it had looked like this, then it would just be x is less than 3. But because it's a solid circle, x is less than or equal to 3. And final question on the paper. So we're solving an inequality. I'm going to copy it down underneath, but we should be thinking straight away, there's w's on both sides. There's more on the right, so we're going to take away 7w from the left, and we have to take away 7w from 12w, and we get that. We want to get 5w on its own, so we take away 4, and then to get w on its own, we divide by 5, which is 2/5. If you want to swap it over so that w's on the right and the 2/5 is on w's on the left and the 2/5 is on the right, then you swap the inequality symbol. And of course, you could write it as a decimal if you want. It doesn't matter; they're the same thing. W is less than 2/5. Okay, so those are the answers to those questions. Please leave some comments. Tell me how I did. I may have gone a bit quickly through some of those questions, but remember, if you know what the topic is, you can go away, and I think I mentioned all the topics, and find more videos on how you do those questions. And thank you for watching.